what is going on? Today's guest is a good friend of mine. He's a husband, a father, a son, a brother, an uncle. He's a lot of good things. He's the founder and CEO of a company called the Wealth Consulting Group. They're a national wealth management firm, billions under management. Just a really, really smart dude. My good friend Jimmy Lee. I've known him for about, I think, 5 years now. We met in a coaching group. I've been in different coaching groups for a while, but this is one of the first ones, and probably my favorite one I've ever joined. And so I've been in that since my mid-20s, about 5 years now, and we've both grown tremendously. And we'll see each other every quarter and kind of share updates on what we have going on. And we've just built built a nice friendship, right? And he's very passionate about helping people in this financial world. He's a really great guy, and I feel like he's always trying to help me out, because I know I could use a lot of help in that area. So that was one reason I wanted to have him on too, was where can investors that are maybe more casual investors be thinking more clearly and be smarter with their money. Can't even talk today. So really enjoyed the conversation. And like always, if you like this show, rate 5 stars on iTunes, write a review. It's super helpful. Share the episode with your friends, and enjoy the episode with my good friend Jimmy Lee.
This is Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams, where differing opinions are not only accepted, they're encouraged.
All right, Jimmy, the moment we've been waiting for. We're live. Well, welcome to the show, man. I know you've been one of my longtime fans, so thank you for the support. You're always messaging me about stuff you hear on my podcast, so I appreciate you listening, and I'm glad we're able to finally have you on the show, because I know there's a lot of good stuff you can share that my listeners will enjoy. So welcome.
Well, good. It's an honor to be on your show, and thank you.
A man of few words. That's why I like Jimmy. So it's actually a good day we're talking today, because the crypto markets are tanking. I'm sure you've seen that. All markets are tanking, right? But the crypto markets are tanking. So my portfolio, not to get specifics with dollar amount, but I think it's in the last couple days, or since Saturday, and we're recording on a Tuesday, it's maybe down 30%. So that's fun. But I just plan to hold. I mean, I'm looking at this as a long-term investment. I did just delete the Coinbase app from my phone, though, because I just was getting anxiety constantly checking it, because it's so volatile. But what are your thoughts on that? Are you invested in any crypto yet?
I personally am not, so that's a full disclosure. But I was just on the phone with a reporter from Reuters who was asking me about the volatility in crypto today, and also talking about some specific ETFs and funds that have been, in the news a lot lately, because they own a lot of innovative new companies, and they've also made investments into the crypto space. And those funds are down a lot today. But anyways, my view on it is really just, when I'm talking to clients or friends, just educating them on investing concepts in general around volatility. So anything that any investment that has the ability to go up as fast as, let's say, Bitcoin has over the last 12 months or a few months, you can also go down just as fast. And so we talk about the arithmetic of a loss as financial advisors, in the sense that if you make, let's say, a 50% return, you start out with $100, and 1 year later you're at $150. And then if you lose 50% in that second year, you're back below your original investment. You're back down to $75. So understanding volatility and math and how that could affect your investment's important. But, like you and I have talked about it a bunch, I think. And I think an alternative currency like crypto or Bitcoin over the long run makes a lot of sense. It probably along the way to going much higher than it is today. There'll be a lot of volatility though, and it's just important for people to understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stomaching it firsthand right now. So when it ends up turning to a long term crazy amount of investment assets, I'll just have to know that I stormed or weathered the storm, because it is very, very volatile. I mean, it's volatile by like the minute sometime. Like I'll check, and then like a minute later it'll just be like down 4% or like crazy stuff. Not so much Bitcoin, but some of these smaller coins that I have a good chunk of cash in. But it's pretty wild. So Jimmy, what do you think all young investors should be doing right now that you're not seeing young investors doing?
Well, it's interesting because this last few months, I think, have been very revealing about who now is investing in the market. And with the whole event around GameStop and all the other stocks that were being shorted by hedge funds, let's say, and the retail investor or the small investor, the Robinhood investors, who many of them are younger investors, right, and newer investors that were buying those stocks as it was being promoted by some people on social media. It's great that younger people are interested in investing, because that's not what historically has been true. And most people wait to invest for the long term, way too late in life, and they're behind the eight ball when it comes to retirement because of that. But this whole idea now that I think the pandemic had something to do with it. People sitting at home and had a lot of time to read up on investing and things like that. What I don't want to happen is that the awareness among younger people and investing is fantastic, but if it's around making a quick buck and it's easy to make money in the stock market and in essence gamble, that is not what we want people to learn. So I think what's important for younger investors to know is that making money in the stock market is really a long-term thing. It's super boring, like in the beginning.
Yeah.
You invest money and you don't make a whole lot, but compound interest over long periods of time is a wonder. It's amazing how much money you can accumulate if you just keep at it, adding monthly investments, whatever the dollar amount is, and instead of trying to make a quick buck. So I hope that what comes out of this whole event of the short squeeze and the retail investors and GameStop and Bitcoin, all this, is that younger people don't think it's easy to make money like very quickly in the stock market, and that people don't think that it's a place to go gamble, and because it's not. Most people end up losing a lot of money when they trade, or day trade.
Absolutely. And that is from trusted people I know in this space. And again, it's like, who's even trusted in the crypto space, because it's so new, but at least in my eyes, trusted. That's one of the reasons why crypto is so volatile, is because there is that younger investor that doesn't have the appetite to hold. So there's just like the constant sell-offs. And, I'm hoping long term for me, and it has paid off to this point. I got in 2017, and I bought Bitcoin when it was pretty low cost compared to what it is now. And I think a lot of my positions in some of these coins are going to be really good long term. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people that will also just sell really quick and try to play the dips. And it's just like, I even tried that on like Friday of last week. I was like, you know what? Let me take a position, convert it. I don't know if you know about this, Jimmy, but there's a USD coin, which you can convert crypto. So you can sell crypto for cash, or you can sell crypto as a conversion to buy other crypto. Did you know that?
Yes.
So what I did was, there's this thing called USD coin, which is essentially like cash, but not cash, for reasons I'm sure you could assume why that is. So you convert it to USD coin, and I'm like, I'm going to try to play the spike here. Let me try to play the wave. And of course, Saturday is when the market boomed, so I sold my position, and then my stuff went up like 30% the next day, and I'm like, what the hell? That was the first time I ever tried to play the dip, and it went up 30%. So I guess it's a win-win for me either way. Either my portfolio booms, or I get to buy in lower. But I agree with you. Like, I don't want to try to play these dips anymore. And that's why I told you, I deleted the Coinbase app from my phone. I just can't I can't deal with it anymore. It's just too stressful. I just want to look every few days, and I'm confident that 5-10 years from now I'll be at a really good place. But I'm not putting any money in there. I'm not like, and you know my situation. I live below my means. I don't have a lot of expenses, so I'm obviously taking a gamble, and it's a high risk asset type, but it's none of it's money that, like, if I lost it, it would affect my lifestyle, you know?
I do know that.
So yeah, actually you do know that. That's true, Jimmy. You do know that. So what is your opinion on the Robinhood thing? Like, do you think it's effed up that they, like, disallowed GameStop trades? Like, what do you think? There's a conspiracy behind that? Like, that was a pretty controversial.
No, there was no conspiracy. When the CEO was being interviewed by CNBC on the day that they did that, I think he was a little sly about his comments on why he had to do it. He said that it had something to do with regulatory reasons, but the bottom line is they needed to raise cash for reasons that have to do with financial capital requirements for firms like theirs, you know? So they just had to do it. They were forced to do it by the companies that they do business with, that they work with. And so it was a kind of a financial regulatory type requirement. And so I don't think there's any conspiracy behind it. What I am concerned about, though, was this whole thing about, social equity kind of as a play to stock manipulation, which is really what it was, meaning that there's no way that that company or other companies were worth the prices that the shares were trading at some point, right? And but the reason behind it was sort of behind a lot of the things that you've discussed on your shows from a political side. There was a social aspect to it that it was about getting the man, and hurting Wall Street and hedge funds as bad people and that kind of a thing. And I think that was just a disguise for really stock manipulation, because when you look back at the trading of, let's say, that company, it wasn't just a little guy investing $1,000 into those stocks. There were some big volume trades with massive amounts of money kind of, playing that. And so there are hedge funds probably, I'm assuming, that potentially rode that stock up, and then probably rode it back down, meaning profited from it. I know that as it started to fall, the average shareholder, I believe, was around $300 a share on GameStop. And I'm not sure what it's trading now, but let's say it's around 50 or something. But so most people that bought investments into that company will end up losing a lot of money, which is what happens every single time. And what I would say about volatility and what's been going on lately is that for those of us been around a little while investing, we remember the kind of .com era. And while I think there are some parallels that I would discuss, that I'm going to talk about right now, I think there are also differences, meaning that in the .com era, if you recall back then, Jeremy, you were probably like maybe like in kindergarten or something, but there were companies that were being bid up to crazy market valuations that had not sold a product yet. But it wasn't just one or two companies, but there were lots of companies. And then I remember there was a mutual fund that went up, over 120% called the Munder Net Fund, and it had all these high tech names in it. And then after the .com bubble burst, all the billions of dollars that went into that, the fund actually ended up folding shop. They ended up going out of business, and so it doesn't exist anymore. So this seems a little bit like it in terms of the hype in some of the assets that I see bubbles in. And by the way, it's not just the assets or stocks that have gone up like a ton, 700%, in 1 year, or 300 or 400 or 500% in 1 year. There are big names, some of the biggest companies in the world that employ the most amount of people that have gone up a lot, and a lot of investors have put money into those stocks. And by the way that most people invest in the stock market these days, through ETFs or index funds, when you buy an S&P 500 index fund, 30 cents on every dollar approximately is going into the top 6 or 7 names. So you're not really as diversified as people think they are when they buy like an index fund like that. It's not 500 companies evenly weighted. Those funds are market weighted. And so you're getting a lot of names that are like the FANG stocks and stuff like that. And so it's important to diversify. And I don't think that diversification is bad. I know a lot of people in my industry say that diversification is dead or asset allocation is dead and you've got to ride your winners and all this other stuff. But I don't believe in that. And so I think, once again, most people can't stomach the volatility of a diversified stock portfolio, let alone, the volatility in some assets like FANG stocks or Tesla or Bitcoin or whatever.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing. So what you touched on, like the relationship with the consumer and Wall Street. How did the average, just I'm thinking about the average working class American doesn't have a very positive view of Wall Street and that whole industry. So that's why there wasn't a lot of sympathy for some of these hedge funds, even though some of these hedge funds are using money from like middle income America, right? And their hedge funds. So it's kind of like ignorant to be like, oh, it's all these hedge fund billionaires. Like maybe the owners of the funds and stuff like that, but they're using money from middle income, from war veterans, from these retired people that have invested all their money. So it's not like it's just not billionaires getting hurt. But how do you think we repair the relationship between the common working American and Wall Street so they aren't hating on it so much?
I think the answer is more transparency, but I want to touch on that subject you were alluding to about how the hedge funds, it's not, they're investing money for middle America. And if you're going to try to directly invest into most hedge funds, you do have to be a very high net worth person, make a large investment. But some of the hedge funds that were in the news with the short squeeze events when they were going on, what pension funds, that are pension funds for states or companies or unions or endowments, those kind of big investment funds will hire hedge funds because of their good performance, right, in the past. And so that's where, in essence, yes, some people that lost money in those hedge funds are investors in, pension plans that could be middle America workers, like blue collar workers, right? And so that's kind of how that happened. But in essence, I think the mistrust amongst the common, investor or individual in Wall Street, I think a lot of that had to do with the financial crisis. That wasn't too long ago, 2008, 2009, and banks were bailed out by the government. And some people that believe in free markets, like yourself, might say, hey, they should have let those banks go away, right? And that's true capitalism. I think in hindsight, though, that the government did the right thing because of the banking system is really the foundation of all commerce and business, and I think it would have been too big of a problem to try to fix if more financial institutions went out of business than did, and the government didn't bail out some of those banks. But I can easily see where someone might say, look, those are my tax dollars that are going to bail out these people that work at these banks, and these CEOs and executives at these banks or whatever financial institution that got bailed out are making millions and millions and millions of dollars and still made millions of dollars even after the financial crisis. And so how's that fair? So I think you have to understand more beyond just that headline in order to understand that probably in that situation, it was a good thing that the government bailed out a lot of the financial institutions that were in trouble, because we really could have seen something that was more like the Great Depression that most of us, didn't experience and don't know and have to read about. But if you talk to people that lived throughout that time, because I have clients that did, a very tough situation. And of course now I think the financial markets are much more stable in the sense that there are, triggers that stop people from selling or markets will close if there's too much volatility and those types of things. But anyway, I think that transparency around fees, people in my industry, I know that there's just like doctors, there are 1 out of 1,000 bad doctors out there, or 1 out of 1,000, or maybe even 10,000 or 100,000 bad financial advisors that run Ponzi schemes, and you hear about them in the news all the time, right? And once again, what I hope doesn't happen with this, with the last like 30, 90 days of this short squeeze stuff and the retail investor versus Wall Street, is that mistrust doesn't go up even more than it already is, right? That people think that, investing in the stock market or Wall Street is a game, or that they're being gamed by bigger players that have more money and access to certain things, because I truly don't believe that's the case. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really don't.
No, for sure. And I was just writing down a couple notes here because I wanted to bring it up. So, yeah, I mean, we learned it from COVID, political coverage. I mean, news channels are for profit. So anything they can do to paint a story to appeal to their viewer base, which is mass America, to make Wall Street look bad or whatever. I mean, yeah, they're just going to do it till the end of time. I mean, you have, it's just how not to get super controversial, but like how like I viewed the police brutality thing. Like I'm a big proponent of drug legalization, which puts hundreds of thousands of Americans, disproportionately minority, in prison are drug crimes. Non-violent crimes, oftentimes possession of a relatively small amount of drugs. Hundreds of thousands of a majority men are put in prison for drug crimes. A very, very small amount of people are killed by cops. Even smaller amount killed by that are unarmed by cops. So I think the news, they cherry pick these cases and paint a narrative, and a lot of people do buy into it. And I don't know what the solution is. I think like what the UK has, which is like, obviously it's government ran, so it's going to lean like more towards, it's going to be left leaning, but it's at least not for profit, right? And I'm starting to become like a weird like libertarian with like a few progressive viewpoints, and like news is kind of one of them, because when you have these for-profit news companies that really aren't journalism, it's entertainment on the right and left, right? It's not pure journalism. I don't even know if that's very rare nowadays. It's just, what can I do to get the most ratings? And it's going to paint a narrative, and a lot of people buy into it. And then I wrote something down. Capitalism, you brought up. I'm like a pretty pure capitalist. Capitalism gets a bad rep because of bailouts. Bailouts aren't true capitalism. In many cases, I'm actually not for bailouts. Bailouts are for, the right and left, and lots of Americans in some cases are for certain bailouts. Like maybe a farm bailout does make sense. I don't know. We could go down the list of all the bailouts, but true capitalism is letting businesses fail, not bailing them out. It's like, hey, if you can't run your business effectively and you did all these things wrong to get into this bad place, you deserve to fail. That's pure capitalism. And small businesses run off a pure capitalistic society, because if you have 10 employees and you're doing $2 million in revenue, you're not getting a government bailout. Maybe you got a $5,000 in PPP loans or something during COVID, but you're not getting a $50 billion government bailout. So I actually want to do a whole episode on capitalism, because I think although no system is perfect, pure capitalism, especially with how we have social media and we can be transparent with customer experiences and stuff like that, I think if there's ever a time where true capitalism could be effective, it's now, right? Because if someone screws you over, there's review sites for that. Like, we can kind of self-regulate businesses more than we ever have before. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think we could be more capitalistic than we are now, or do you like the level of government involvement we have?
No, I think you and I share similar views on this subject, and I'm a free markets person. I love this country and what it stands for in terms of capitalism and on the business side of things. And I wasn't born here, and even in South Korea, where I was born, it's a very democratic, capitalistic government, in terms of the economy and how they try to emulate the United States a lot. But even there, until let's say the last 2 decades, if you weren't in the right situation with the right people, you didn't really have as fair of a chance as you do here in the United States. And so I think we've got something to protect and preserve here. I know many immigrants, first generation, that have made something of themselves and didn't come from money, just through hard work. It's hard for me to think that, there are people out there, especially fathers, that aren't working and feeding their families because there are always jobs out there, even when they're not jobs. They may not be the jobs that they want to, ideally have forever, but there's work, in the United States, typically all the time. And I know there are a lot of people right now that are out of work because of the pandemic. It's not something that they can control. I get that. But in terms of capitalism and free markets, I do believe now with the ability to research and do reviews like you were talking about, and people can, do things online, and that's good. It's also bad too, because you could also have people that are lying, right? And what do you believe when you go research online, right? So just because you find something on Google, does it mean that it's a fact, or is it somebody's opinion, right? So I think
I trust that over government intervention, I would say, though. I would trust the better belief, and that's the whole idea of capitalism, is that people, although no system is perfect, right? And I will agree, capitalism is imperfect. Like, part of capitalism is there are a lot of winners, but there are inherently going to be some people that are big time, the bad end of the deal on the bottom end of capitalism, right? But it does create an opportunity, which is what I think is the most important thing about capitalism, is it creates opportunity for people, and based on how much you work. So what age did you move here from South Korea?
I was 6.
Do you remember?
8 years old. What's that?
Do you remember moving here when you were 6?
I do. I mean, not every last bit, but yes, I do.
And what inspired your parents to move here?
I want to get back to the capitalism subject here in a minute, but
Yes.
my parents my father always wanted to come to the United States. It was a dream of his as a young person, and they were both in the entertainment industry. My mother was actually a quite famous singer back then, and I think during that time, there was an opportunity for them to career-wise to make a change. It wasn't necessarily the best time to come to the United States, because the United States economy wasn't that great. Interest rates were super high to buy houses and stuff like that, and it wasn't necessarily the best time. But it was really driven by my father's desire to come to the U.S. He had worked in the military as a producer of entertainment, and that's how my mother and he had met. And he had dealt with a lot of people that were Americans in the military that he was setting up shows for. And so I'm guessing, and I've talked to him and joked with him a little bit about it, but he probably thought life was like maybe the way that the higher ups in the military operated back there. And but he knew some English, learned some English because of his interactions with the U.S. military and working with them in business. And we ended up moving to Las Vegas because they had some friends that were very, very successful entertainers that had a show on the Strip. And so it was very fortuitous for us to come to Las Vegas. And while my parents never got back into entertainment, I think that their goal in life has always been, like a lot of other Asian families and parents, is to make sure that their kids are doing well. And my brother is doing pretty well, I think, and I'm doing pretty well, I think. And so for that, they're proud and happy. And so I think that's kind of how we ended up here.
That's great. And yeah, I mean, that's the American dream, right? Moved your family over and see your kids grow up and be successful. I mean, something that's not talked about too much, like every time I have a controversial viewpoint on anything political, it's because of my white privilege. But with Asian privilege, Asians actually earn, they're more educated than white people. They earn a higher income. The Asians just skipped over the white privilege and they're the superior, income earning race. And not just so Asia's obviously a huge continent. This is for, I believe, Korean Americans, Chinese Americans, and for Indian Americans, all earn more on average per capita. are much less likely. Asian community is uses like proportionate to their population is on government assistance less than white people as well. So, what are your thoughts on that? What's the secret in these Asian families that they just skipped over white privilege, and like we're gonna be the most successful of the communities? What do you think it is?
I think the Asian culture, not unlike other cultures, really believe in working hard. So time, spending extra hours working other people, and also value education. So I know that for some of the Asian people that I know, or even for myself and my family, getting a college degree was not a choice. It was not an option. It was something that was expected. That's why we came to the United States, so we had the opportunity to get a better education, and hopefully that lead to more success in life, whether it be business or other ways that you want to measure success. And so I think that's it. I think it's an idea of work ethic and an education combined that possibly leads to that. And then also, I know that there, and this is true. I mean, math is math, whether you're from South Korea or the United States. And so I think, math and science, I think Asians kind of excel in those areas. And I know that if you're Asian, it's probably not good to say that you're Asian if you're trying to apply for Harvard or something, try to get in, because there's so many at some of those institutions that concentrate on math and science, for example. But maybe Harvard wasn't a good example for that. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. And going back to government intervention or regulation, I think there needs to be regulation, but as you believe, I think that it should be more about the people governing, right? And I'm not a huge fan of regulation and more regulation to the point where it's disruptive and it slows things down, right? And we know that there's good and bad with it. And so that's an interesting topic you could probably chat for hours on, but I'd rather not. But I'm a big fan of, like we talked about before, capitalism and free markets and having the government less in our lives, not more. And so I think I share your views on that. And anyway,
Yeah,
I'm very grateful.
for sure, and I'm very grateful as well. And I do a daily gratitude list with a few friends of mine. We write down things we're grateful for and accomplishments and goals, and regularly I put down that I'm like a U.S. citizen. I mean, less than 5% of the world is a U.S. citizen, and less than 10% is probably in either U.S. or some sort of peer nation where they, like Western Europe or Australia or something. I mean, we're very fortunate to be in a place where we have the freedoms and the opportunities. And yeah, we're far from perfect, but when I hear about oppression and things like that, and again, not that we don't have room for growth, there's always room for growth. We know each other from a coaching group. Like, we're all about growth and improvement. It's just like, there's literally countries right now where, like Saudi Arabia, I mean, talk about like women being treated unfairly. I mean, like they can't even drive. North Korea, that literally like communist, like concentration camps. And if you even laugh or cry the wrong way, like seriously, like you can get killed or be put in prison. I mean, there's China. I mean, it's illegal to criticize. Over 1 billion people on this planet can go to prison for criticizing their leader. We take that for granted. Like, so, again, far from perfect, but I think that's where travel comes in, because I've been to a lot of places and I'm like, shit, like I cannot wait to go back and have roads where there's not holes and like water's hot, just basic stuff, right? A hot shower. I remember I couldn't wait to just have a nice steaming hot shower. Like, even the temperature of our showers we take for granted, in my opinion, or I did, until I went to a country where it was like, okay, the shower is hot, but I didn't think it was hot like I was used to. I was like, I'm looking forward to a steaming hot shower. So what I think we agree on this, though. I actually do want to have a whole episode on capitalism, on like pure capitalism, because I do think we're going to be able to execute something along those lines with the access to information. Like 300 years ago, if I was a swindler, I could start, what were the colonies 300 years ago or something? I don't know. Maybe I was in Virginia or something, and I could like run a scam and then just move to the next town and run a scam and move to the next town. And like, that is a lot harder to do now with social media profiles, and people do due diligence on you. And there's, there's a lot more measures in place to help
you know
with
what
that
though,
stuff.
Jeremy? I would say this. In my lifetime, I've never been more concerned about people getting scammed than today. And you're a tech guy. And so I got a call this morning from some, fraudulent place that said, I can't remember what it was. I Googled it to see if it was a scam, and it was, and to hit one, and then so there's so many of these scams where people are calling. And I read an article in the USA Today about how college students in Africa were stealing money, from the U.S. government on unemployment claims, right? Fake ones, right? And then turning it into Bitcoin, right? And I know that somebody filed a fraudulent unemployment claim on me. And I have friends that are in the cybersecurity business. I have, obviously, in the business that I'm in, we're very concerned about financial security and everything. And so with what you said about people scamming and things, I don't know. I mean, I think there's more transparency to research people online, but in terms of the complexity of the kind of crimes that can be committed in terms of scamming people for money, I think it's a lot crazier these days. I mean, you get somebody like my mom and dad who get a phone call from somebody that says that their Social Security payments are going to stop. There's a decent chance they're going to hit one and get money stolen from them somehow. So it's the cyber world is something that is getting worse and worse in terms of, I think, people's privacy, their information getting shared everywhere, and all these data breaches that we've seen, even from companies that specialize in that industry. I mean, it's pretty scary to me. And I'm not a tech person, and if I was, I probably would be even more scared. I have a client and a friend who is a tech person, and the guy, every time there's a breach, he says, tomorrow morning, you're going to see this in the headline. And of course, it comes out, and then he tells me to create 28 character passwords with this, and that. But most people aren't going to do that every single month or 2 months.
Totally. And I do think there has to be some level of consumer responsibility too. I mean, sometimes when people get scammed, you're just like, why in the world would you have trusted that person? Sometimes it's just like there's going to be some gullible people, and unfortunately they're going to get the bad end of the stick. If it sounds too good to be true, it is, right? So one more question about you being from South Korea I meant to ask a minute ago. Do you feel like in modern America you have experienced disadvantages for being Korean?
Personally, no. I can't say that in representation of the obviously entire Asian community, but because I actually have a friend who's a very successful realtor, and he was the national president or chairman of a big real estate organization called ARIA, and it's an association of Asians or people that are interested in the Asian community that are real estate industry kind of related, I guess, or specifically in real estate anyway. And they have their own political action committees and people that deal with government officials at a federal level and local. And I've been educated a little bit about how maybe Asians are discriminated against when it comes to certain things, when it comes to maybe borrowing money or whatever. I have some good discussions. I've had some good discussions with him about that, and because in my own personal experience, I have not had that. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And so, but like I said to you before, and many times, I'm so grateful to be here in this country because I have traveled the world a little bit like you have, and I have seen other things or other places and how business works or how it is to be a citizen in other countries. And while it's not perfect here, there's no question we have a lot of room for improvement in many, many, many areas. But here I feel like if you want to work, you can get a job and you can put food on the table for your family, and you have a fair chance, you know. Whereas I think in a lot of places around the world, you don't. And if you think about the other huge economies in populations, China, Russia, I mean, I wouldn't want to live in a communist country where you talked about earlier, if you had a view and you made it public, that you could end up in jail or even worse, right? So that's not a place I want to be. And so I like it here from that aspect. I also like traveling the world and learning new things and learning how people live. And I think that lifestyles in certain parts of the country are great too. But I really do appreciate and I'm grateful that I am here and that my parents chose the United States to come to. And they actually even chose Las Vegas as a place because I ended up becoming a business owner out of college. And it's a very, good place to be a small business owner, I think. And so I'm grateful for all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a great question to ask anybody that's super critical of the U.S. and like I would love for anybody to share with me. And it's just like, again, always room for growth. We should be having all these discussions about, racial equality. And I think the much bigger issue is class warfare. I mean, I think it's just that's the much bigger thing that's holding people back. Isn't the color of their skin? It's what class they're born into, or the early education they have and stuff. But like, what country is doing it better, right? It's like, if we're so bad, like, what's a better example out there? And I know some European countries will be used, maybe Australia. Sweden was used for a while until they were for herd immunity. Now, like, the super far left's not a big fan of Sweden because they're like, we're not going to lock anything down and we're just going to like protect the old people, which is kind of what I've been for day one. But yeah, it's like, what country's doing it better? And what country has, because I guess that's the thing with like our system too, right? Is far from perfect, but we have the best medical care. We have the best innovation. All the tech companies are here. There's a multi-million person waiting list to get into this country of people that would love to leave their current country. And it's just like, maybe there are some downsides to our system, and we should continue to work on trying to fix those without destroying the Constitution, right? But we have a lot here. Like, think about like just Facebook and Google specifically. Like, because we're in a capitalistic society that allowed those people to have the freedom to do that and the founders to earn billions of dollars and stuff. Think about how social media and the internet is changing the world. Like, people in third world countries now have access to information and can start businesses. And like, what we have here is impacting people on a world scale. I don't think it's just coincidence that a couple hundred years ago we come up with the first capitalistic society and then technology booms the way it has, right? And so yeah, we agree on that. Another question kind of related, and I was a mutual friend of ours, you'll know who it is when I tell you the topic. What are your thoughts? I always thought income tax, I do agree that income tax I think is too high. I think maybe if I'm not for necessarily a capital gains tax increase, but I'm not totally against it either. But I am for a income tax decrease, because nearly a 40% federal weight for income earners. I mean, those are the people trading time for money, right? The people, even if you're in $500,000 a year or $1 million a year, like, and you're in a tax bracket in some states of 50%. What are your thoughts on like lowering the income tax and maybe bumping up the capital gains tax slightly? I know a lot of investors love the long-term capital gains tax rates, and it's not treated the same as income tax, but I do view that as some sort of inequality. It's like the income earners that maybe they're at the middle class, maybe they're 150 household, they're in a 25 or 30% tax bracket. They're paying a higher tax rate and they're exchanging their time for money. Most of that income is probably going to be put into the local economy or whatever it is. they're paying a higher tax rate with the bill compared to the billionaire investor. Just, taking some risks for sure. And I'm not for like 50% tax rates or anything. But what are your thoughts on like lowering the income tax rate and maybe bumping up the capital gains a little bit, making it like a flat 25 or something across the board?
Yeah, I mean, my initial thought is that if you think income taxes are going to go down, then you're in a dream, because it's not going to happen for a while with the administration that we have today. Now, could there be a middle income tax reduction in some areas? Possibly in the next 4 years, but I'm not sure how we're going to be able to do that. So I think from my view on it is that, again, when you look back upon history, when income taxes are higher, now there have been times in our history where income tax rates have been super high, but there were all sorts of deductions and ways to effectively pay less taxes. So right now I think we're in a pretty good place, but at some point the discussion that politicians have not been having, because of all the other stuff that they've been focused on in the last, let's say, 12 years or more, is that we have a huge deficit in this country, right? We spend a lot more than we make, and one way to make is tax revenues. I get it, but and we probably our deficit's so big that you probably can't grow your way out of it. So on that subject, which is not directly answering your question, but on that subject, we're probably going to have to see some inflation, in order for our country to be able to pay off our debt, and in a different way. But the question that I was alluding to that we haven't been talking about is that the biggest expenditures come in social services, Social Security and Medicare. And those are subjects that most presidents don't really get into until they've been elected for a second term, because they know that reducing Social Security benefits and Medicare benefits are not a subject that they should be campaigning on to try to really get elected, right? And so, unfortunately, because of the situation that we're in, that's really the question that Americans are going to have to face, is that as the younger people, we're going to have to wait longer to get Medicare benefits, and we're going to have to wait longer to get Social Security benefits, and both of those benefits are going to have to be reduced. It truly is probably the only way for us to get back into a better balance that's sustainable. Because I know a lot of conservative people, when it comes to economics, are extremely concerned, obviously, about all the government spending and all the money that we're printing, right? And so while it helps risk assets like stocks and real estate go up in the short term, in relative terms, if you get hyperinflation like we had in the past in this country, then you're really not making money. It's not good for people. And so getting back to taxes, do I think that lowering income taxes would be a good idea? Overall, I think we're in a pretty good place right now. And where I think the discussions, when it comes to politics around income taxes need to be held more is that, if you're making, let's say, millions and millions and millions of dollars of income, and you're in this like very small percentage of Americans whose net worth has gone up an incredible amount by hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions or billions because you own so much private equity or stock in certain companies, right? Then maybe those people could afford to pay a lot more in taxes, right? Because, being worth $20 billion versus $10 billion, you've got enough at $10 billion, right? But for small business owners like yourself that take a lot of risk, borrow a lot of money, employ a lot of people, maybe don't make money for years or have failed businesses in the past, and then finally you find something that works, right? And you start making some good income, seeing half of that go away to the government in taxes is tough. What I think we have to be careful about taxes is, in capital gains too, is because capital gains, more about investing money, right? Mm-hmm. And we want to promote investments, whether it's investing in publicly traded companies or private companies. I believe that promotes economic growth. And so I think when you make capital gains too high, then I think you are disincenting investing, right? Which is not good, because it creates jobs. Now, as far as income taxes go, back to what we were talking about a second ago, could we afford to have those income taxes go down? Yes, but if the taxes are too high and you disincent people from taking risk, then they won't, or they'll go somewhere else. I remember I've been to Sweden a couple of times, and I remember talking to an entrepreneur there who has a lot of family wealth. Their family, I think, were the first ones to import bananas into the whole entire country, and they were in the shipping business. And at that time, the person told me that most of their businesses are domiciled like in Ireland or some other places that are offshore because the tax rates in Sweden are just too high to take risk. And so that's what will happen is capital will move to where it needs to go and where there are the best investment opportunities. And I think that's what's going to happen. So in my opinion, I think we have to have a tax structure here in the United States that promotes investment, not just from Americans, but from outside people to want to invest here in a controlled way, in a healthy way. And so I think income taxes going up too high, I think potentially could curtail that, and that's not good for the economy and for the United States and all Americans. But I think that potentially, if your income is so high, where it doesn't really matter, can you pay more taxes? Probably that's where you can probably get some tax hikes and it makes some sense. And a lot of those people that are that wealthy, as you know, Jeremy, plan to give all their money away to charity anyways because it's so much wealth. They don't want their kids to get tens of billions of dollars, right, or billions of dollars. And so for those people that don't care about it, great, create some additional taxes for them. But for people that are business owners, making $500,000 to maybe a couple $1,000,000 a year of income or in that range, I know that's a lot of money. And I don't want to turn anybody off that's listening that says, wow, think about what the average income is for an American family and what you just said. I get it, but those are the people that are putting a lot of people to work in creating jobs that for a lot of people, right? And I know one thing as a small business owner, and I think you can attest to this, the more money I've always earned, the better it's always been for the people that I employ, always when it comes to compensation and benefits, always. And I can't see that being different.
Yeah. And I don't want to de-incentivize investment. Something I've just been thinking of, and it's just, I'll think about these things. A flat 25 long-term capital gains and income. Like maybe your first 50,000 is tax-free. So people under 50 grand pay no taxes. Anything above, whether it's capital gains or income, because I definitely think our current system is a little flawed because the people, like, I invest, right? Like you and me are going to invest whether the capital gains tax is 20%, 15%, 25%. We're going to invest regardless. I don't think that's going to de-incentivize too much. Obviously, if it got up to like 50%, I think people would be like, I'm going to give away half my profits. I think once you start finding a co-founder of your company basically at 50%. But I don't like even like people that think you're right, 500 to 200 or 500 to 2 million in income, right? Like, but even households that maybe make 200 in income, that they're, that's, I guess, upper middle in modern times. They both are college degrees. They've worked their way up in a company. They've worked really hard. I mean, what's that, a 30% tax bracket? Like they're paying 30%. Like obviously it's like depending on the state, maybe more. So that's even high. And again, that's all I'm saying is I guess and ordinary income is traditionally trading time for money, and it's somebody's life. It's basically what they're dedicating their life to. Where capital gains is, investors are going to invest because they want to have their capital grow. So whether it's 15, 20, 25%, I don't, in my mind, I don't think that's going to de-incentivize investment too much. But when it's trading time for money, which is typically what ordinary income is, it's working. Having a higher tax rate for that middle income family, to me, does seem a little off. And by the way, Democrats or Republicans don't even touch this issue. Like, they're both extremely hypocritical when it comes to this stuff. And I lean conservative on many things, as you know, but like, modern Republican Party isn't true conservative. They're both big government parties. It's just where do they want the big government spending to be?
We could talk for hours on labeling, right? And people calling themselves Republicans or liberals or Democrats or whatever you want to say. I think it's tough to categorize people into certain areas because, like you said, the traditional values of the Republican Party may not look like what they are today, and the same for the Democratic Party, right? So there's different things that people care about. And as you know, when it comes to politics and voting, people don't even vote on policy. They just vote on personality typically. And so,
or they vote on a single issue like abortion.
Yeah, single issue and advertising and all that stuff. But, taxes, going back to taxes, I'm not sure what I'm understanding from you. I know
I'm just curious. There's something I wrote down to bring up with you. I was just curious.
I think we have a pretty good system. Like, here's what I know, and here's what I know a very small percentage of Americans pay the majority of income taxes in the United States as a percentage. We know that. So because I've seen a lot of tax returns and people that are, at the average household incomes as a percentage, it's a marginal tax rate. So maybe your tax rate on the last dollars are 25%, but when you add up from $1, you might be like under 20.
Yeah, for sure. I don't hate our current system. So
I guess what I'm saying is I think that there are probably lots of improvements that can be made to the tax system. I'm not an expert at it, but from my research, we have a pretty decent system now. I just think it has to be at a point where it's not a disincentive to make investments here in the U.S. for people, and from a capital gain perspective. And then from an income perspective, if you're giving away a lot of your hard-earned money in taxes and you don't have an incentive to work, we don't want to do that either. And so I just think there has to be a good balance of that. And as long as we can maintain that balance, I think that it'll still be the best system. And not that there can't be better, but it is a good system.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. Like, I don't hate our system by any means. I think, again, compared to, in France, where the highest tax rate's like 70% or something. It's like, we're not France, so that's good. But yeah, I don't hate our system. That's where I think the little room for improvement would be. And I don't even know who would run on that, Republicans or Democrats, where it's just like, hey, let's lower the income tax, especially for people earning $100,000 household. Like that money's going right back into the economy.
To get elected, as you know, there are people that'll run on anything, and whether they actually do or not, who knows? But there's a person, I won't mention the name, that is trying to take over Gavin Newsom's seat, and in California, on the recall, and the person's promoting no state income taxes. Right? That sounds good, doesn't it? But you're talking about a state that's in
never happen.
One of the worst conditions from a fiscal standpoint, and talking about eliminating state income taxes. And so it's a fantasy, but what gets you votes, I guess, the politicians will do what they do. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. So that was a good combo. And yeah, I just, wherever the flow takes us, Jimmy, I didn't even plan on talking about capital gains and stuff. It's just something that's been on my mind, and I was like, let me talk about that with Jimmy, because I think he could share some good insight. So, a little shift. I wanted to ask you how you obviously you work with some high net worth clients. What do you think? How do you think you're able to most effectively build trust with some of these high net worth clients? What have you learned over the years with, building relationships with the top 1% or the top fraction of 1%? What are some of the things you've done over the years to build good relationships with those people?
I mean, it's probably the same as building trust with anybody else. It's probably starts a lot with authenticity. I know that's a value that you care about, and I do too. And so being real, I know that your whole show is about that, really. And so I think people that have a good intuition, and I think everybody has a good intuition, really, if they look for it, can tell if somebody's not being real or not. And so I think being very truthful and transparent, and being, I guess, a little less salesy, if that's the right word for it. I don't know. But relationships are also built over time too, right? And trust is built, over time. And so while you may have all the right intentions, if you don't have the time to be able to go through the difficult phases of a relationship, and because that's really where I think the trust is built. So a good analogy for that in my industry is, or for me personally is, I've been in the business a long time. And I've been through the dot-com bubble where the stock market went down 50%, went through the financial crisis where the stock market went down 50%. Last year, the stock market went down 37% in the bottom of the pandemic, at the bottom of the pandemic. And so clients that I had literally, dot-com era, don't call me ever when there's volatility. So the more experiences that you have with someone and things have worked out, and at the whole time we're educating people about the fundamentals of being a good investor, and how to do that. And it's really more about behavioral finance and investment advisors helping their clients make good decisions and not make emotional bad decisions with their money. I think a lot of good advisors focus on that. So I think those are the ideas that can help build trust. Also, not just to open up an account. So, and you and I have a little bit of experience with this, but I'm not interested in if you say, hey, look, I've got XYZ dollars to invest. Can you buy this for me tomorrow? My answer would be, why do you want to do that? And that's really not the way we work. Really want to start with, what are your goals? What's important to you about your money? What are you trying to accomplish? I'm not a person to work with if you're trying to make a quick buck, really, right? Or if you're going to be or if I'm going to be an order taker and you're going to tell me how to do our job, right? And so, not that we don't work with clients in a constructive way, where we're collaborating a lot, discussing a lot of different ideas that go back and forth. Of course, we're doing that. I'm doing that. But really, over the long term, I think transparency and talking about things that are really important to someone about their money and helping them build plans that they can get confidence in, and then educating them to the point that they want to be educated, right? And then having really good communication afterwards. Not just when we open up a relationship and you get a client and you've made a sale, but that's when the relationship starts. So it's really, truly a successful relationship is where clients can see the fruition of the goals that they set out many years ago, and because they stuck to plans. And again, plans have to be flexible enough to make adjustments when things happen, because you never know what's going to happen in your life, even tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so we have to make adjustments as we go. But I think over time, that's where the trust is built. And, I think asking great questions, listening, those are all important things.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Are you going to work for the rest of your life in this industry? I know you're really passionate about this, and I would say you definitely seem to have, from our frequent conversations, just a passion for helping people manage their money and come up with a plan, I would say, and just doing it the right way. Is this something you see yourself doing for the rest of your life? Even when you quote unquote retire, you're still going to be doing it at some level?
I think that I'll be very active, extremely active in my industry and in my job up until, let's say, normal retirement age. And then I'll still be a very interested person, because I'll probably still have a lot of my own net worth invested into the company if I live that long. Yeah. And so I'll be an interested person observing what's going on, and I'll always pay attention to it. And so, yes, I think for up until I get, probably, past life expectancy age, I'll still have a lot of interest in it. How active I am or not, I probably won't be as active when I get to, into my 60s. But you never know. I don't know. I have other interests too, but I'm not sure if I'm going to spend a lot of professional time in those things or not. Who knows? And as far as what you said earlier about building trust with people and all those things, we've talked a lot about money management and about investing. Honestly, investing is just a commodity. I say this to people all the time. So if you're working with a good advisor that's not conflicted with a lot of different conflicts that may exist, I've been in that world where I started my career working in systems where there's conflicts from the people that create the brokerage firms that create financial products, to people that manage local offices that get incented for people to sell certain things or not sell certain things. You know what I mean? And then at the advisor level, advisors can be conflicted too based on their own personal circumstances, and hopefully they're not. And so it's very important to, I think, work with people that don't have a lot of those conflicts. It gives the consumer the ability to have a better chance at getting really good advice, in my opinion. Doesn't mean that there aren't great financial advisors in all of those different entities or different places where they're working. But sometimes those conflicts do matter. And so being an independent advisor where we can be conflict free, where we could actually act in a fiduciary capacity, where our recommendations have to be in the best interest of our clients, not just suitable. I know these are kind of industry lingo type things, and there are a lot of good advisors that don't necessarily act in a fiduciary capacity too, I think. But it just helps the investor consumer have a better chance of getting good advice. So if you're working with the top brass of our profession, and they're able to give good objective advice, then really the investment portfolio that you end up with is probably going to be a lot like a lot of other investment portfolios that you can end up with. Now, I think where an advisor or a firm can add a ton of value, though, is most investors that invest in the stock market, Jeremy, lose money. There's studies that we see all the time from companies that research mutual funds. And let's say in any given decade, the mutual fund that's investing in stocks made 10%. What they'll do is they'll look at when each shareholder of those funds bought and sold those shares. And inevitably, what you see is that investors end up making like 30 to 50% of the return of the funds. And then in meetings, I'll ask people, why do you think that is? And the people that are in those meetings might say it's fees or whatever. It's 100% almost. It's always because people put a lot of money in when the stock market's high, and when it goes through its normal corrections and bear markets, they get out, they panic, and they let their emotions set in and they make a bad decision. So on that subject, what's really interesting is I've worked with people that have millions of dollars in the stock market, and maybe they've had money in the stock market for years, maybe like over decades. And I ask them a simple question like, do you know what a bear market is, or what a correction is, and what doesn't mean you have to know what the technical definitions are. What I'm really asking is, do you know how much volatility there is when you invest in stocks in general?
Yeah.
And when I tell them that stocks, like the S&P 500 index, for example, can go down 30 to 40% on average about every 3 to 5 years, and so $1 million could turn into like 650, and that's like normal. Like that's what you should expect. A lot of people are shocked when I say that. A lot of times it's because they've been working, right, throughout all those years when that was going on. And they didn't pay as much attention to it. Plus, they were adding to their portfolio when the market was down. So when you're adding to the portfolio, or dollar cost averaging in at lower prices, and it helps dampen the volatility a bit, and you can make a lot more money, when the market recovers doing it that way. So I think those are all factors that play into it. But predominantly it's because people aren't paying attention to it as much. And I think people are paying attention to it more, but you'd be surprised at how many people actually that have money in stocks with investment experience that don't even know that about how volatile stocks are in general.
No, I don't even know. So, but I'm an amateur investor, so that makes sense. So I have two more questions for you, Jimmy. When did you wake up one day and just be like, man, I'm successful? When did you just wake up and just realize that you were really successful? Do you remember when that was, or like what age you were or what you were doing when you just realized like, I'm just crushing it?
That's a funny question, because I don't want to give a stupid answer.
No answers are stupid.
I'm not really sure that I ever have, honestly, because while I felt good at times before, and you have, let's say something good happens in your business and you get a deal or something or whatever, and or you made a lot of money on something, who knows, right? And you feel good about yourself and you want to pat yourself on the back and everything. I've come to realize, and as older as I've gotten, things could change on a dime. Things can happen to people's health situation. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, right? It didn't matter how much money Steve Jobs had, right? He died, right? And so when you start really thinking about purpose and about a lot of subjects that you've talked to a lot of your guests before, in terms of what's really important about life, you kind of hopefully stay humble as much as possible, right? And hopefully whatever financial success somebody might have, you take that with as much humbleness as you can, and really just be grateful. And I'm always aware that if a challenge occurs, in our business world or financial world, it's something that I expect. It's almost like bear markets. I expect them to happen. So when a challenge occurs in that way in business or whatever, it's not something that comes as a surprise.
Yeah.
And as I know, when those opportunities or those challenges come, you can turn them into opportunities sometimes. And then in hindsight, when you look back at your life and you think about where you're at from a business standpoint, some of those extreme challenging moments were the moments that were the most important, that got you to where you are today, and because you grew, right? And hopefully you use those opportunities to grow. So I'm not sure if I'm there yet in terms of where, in my mind, where that bar is for success, because that bar probably moves all the time. I know that my parents did a good job instilling in me to try to be the best. It's funny. I played golf. My mom turned 80 this last weekend. I played 9 holes with her on Sunday, and she goes, Jimmy, we're driving home from supper with my wife and her, and she was saying, Jimmy, I never quit. I never quit. And I asked my mom, I go, where'd you get that from, Mom? And she said, my mother was a very smart woman, very strong woman, and she just taught me that way, And so I'm sure that's where some of that drive to be better, and to grow comes from. And give my dad some credit too. But my brother and I think we're always trying to be better, and trying to learn. And of course, I've made a gazillion mistakes, just like a lot of other people. But try not to not let those mistakes go to waste, and learn from them and get better.
Absolutely. And I agree with the humbleness. What I feel I've been learning the last few years is a balance of staying humble, but also acknowledging accomplishments. So I guess that's kind of what I'm asking too, is like, not that you should ever feel like you're done growing. I mean, that's again how we know each other as a coaching group where we focus on personal growth. But like, when did you realize like that you just had accomplished not exactly your end goal in life, but where you just accomplished a lot, where it's like, man, I'm doing like really well. Like although I want to continue to move forward, I'm really happy where I am. Where was that point?
I can tell you, it's funny because I'm old now, but I will say that spiritually and on the subject that you're talking about of purpose and gratefulness, probably in the last several years, I've grown more in those few years in that area than maybe all the other years combined in my life. And I'll tell you that probably in the last few years, I've been much more grateful for what I have, and to be able to wake up. I guess so. When you say when did I wake up to acknowledge like I've had some success in my life, you also have to, like, I think when you ask that question, define success, because that is different for people.
That's why I asked, what's based on your definition of success?
I mean, so I'm like you in the sense that I'm not ashamed of wealth, and I think that like our business coach, you and I, and he, the three of us, I know, believe that there are a lot of good things that can come out of generating wealth, But so for me, just to be able to wake up with the health that I have today, and to be able to kind of have the freedom to do what I want to do today, I mean, those are like at the core, right? And relationships are very important to me. So people that are in my life, and unfortunately, I've been put in a position to, have other financial advisors and their clients that I can potentially affect by decisions that I make in my business, in our business. And so I can touch more lives because of the business that I have. It's not just myself and my direct clients that potentially can be affected by decisions I make or don't make. And so I take that responsibility serious, and I think that's what God's given me, is the ability to be in a position where I can actually affect other people, and influence other people, hopefully in a positive way. And I think in the long run, that's probably what I'm here for, right? And so, like I said, just waking up every morning and health is really important, because even when I've had, like, I don't get sick often, but even when I've had the flu in the past, when you can't really function that day, because you feel sick is difficult, especially for someone who is trying to be productive or thinks that they want to be productive in certain ways where they need to have they need to be physical or move around, right, and get around. And so, but anyway, those are all important. And like I said, relationships are very important to me too.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. Gratitude for me is because honestly, like when I hang out around guys like you and Dave, who are like a little bit ahead of me in like business and success from like a wealth standpoint, sometimes that is tough on me because it's just like, man, I got a while to go. Like I feel like I'm doing okay, but I'm just also some days I just feel overwhelmed and I'm just like, I'm not like talking about jet shopping, you know. I got a little bit to go till I'm there. So it sometimes can feel, no matter what level of success you're at, and this is dangerous, obviously, compare yourselves to others, but there are times when I just can't help myself in that stage, and I will compare myself to others. And I think it's good to have some people around me that are pushing me and challenging me to grow. But at the same time, it can be like a little bit of blow to your ego and self-esteem at times, if that makes sense.
Well, you and I have talked about this before. I mean, especially for us men, I think our egos get in the way so often, you know. And so, again, that's something that I've become more and more aware of as I've gotten older. And I know that a lot of the bad decisions I've made in my life were due to my ego, and you know, even like things that are not big decisions. So I would say, hey, look, as far as wealth goes, having more wealth, what does it really do for you? And is it worth the price? And what is the price? Is it something, if it's fun and if it's something you're passionate about and you're building more wealth and creating more opportunity for people around you because of it, then that's fantastic. But if you're, you know, doing it at the cost of, you know, I know that you're single and you don't have kids, but some people, man or woman, you know, potentially could be, you know, I think spending too much time doing that, making money, and not enough time doing other things that might be more important to them in the long run, right? And those other areas suffer, maybe their health, right? So at what cost is that important to you? And so I think people should just ask themselves that question, just like I'm sure that all of us try to think about that, and you know, but also not limit yourself. The limiting beliefs that we all have, and where we put caps on, and as we know, a lot of that is psychological. And so I think just being aware of all those things is great. You know, it's great for conversation and action.
You're definitely right. And I think, and I've shared with you, you know, I live well below my means. Just based off what I have now, if I really wanted to live off that for quite a while, I could. I guess, yeah, I just have to find that balance between what I want, like what will make me happy, and then my ego, because I don't think I really need an insane amount of wealth to live the kind of life that I am happy living. Obviously, I don't have dependents or anything like that right now, but you know, just based off what I've shared, and you know, at a high level, like I don't need, you know, $1 billion to live the lifestyle that would make me very, very happy. So I guess, yeah, for me, I just have to get clear on that more than the ego of like, this is how much my net worth is and this is how much in my bank account, and maybe find some middle ground. So last question, it's the most important question / the best question, Jimmy, so I saved it for last. In our friendship, what are the biggest areas for growth you see for me? Where do you think biggest areas I can grow in our friendship?
You and I have talked about this a little bit, and I think you've talked a lot about openly your relationships, you know, in the past, romantic ones and just relationships in general. And we've talked about different things in relation to, you know, thoughts and that we have, and things that, you know, we think about that cause us to, you know, act the way we do, right? And we've talked about that a lot. And I think it's important for us to realize, I'm not sure if this is for you specifically necessarily, but I think it's important for all of us to realize that a lot of times what's causing the anxiety or the issues that we have emotionally, or things that have happened in the past that affect our decisions today or thinking today. I just think it's important to be aware of it, right? And to realize that a lot of that stuff is just not real. As you know, I'm newly married, and I've got a great spiritual partner that's shared with me a lot of things that's influenced my life in this area too. But in terms of the thoughts that we get that cause a lot of the issues that then create the actions that may not be the best decisions. And if I look back in my life, and a lot of the worst decisions that were made that created problems were self-inflicted, but they were maybe potentially actions that were from not the truth, or things that our mind creates, or are not necessarily things that we should be concerned about or worry about. And so I know that subject is something that you've discussed a lot with other guests in terms of just thinking and thoughts and actions and what's real and not real. I just think it's good that it's a topic that a lot of younger people are talking about. I have a daughter, as you know, and she and I talk about it a lot, because she talks about things that she goes through as a senior in college, and and I tell her, even at my age, on this subject, I've learned a lot about myself just in the last couple of years on this subject. That a lot of the things that I worry about, even today, even if you learn, doesn't mean that you master it. So you got to practice it all the time. I feel like my wife's in the background chirping at me, because she talks about it a lot, and so she concentrates on this a lot, meaning that it's something that's important. So I know that you meditate, and but we're training our minds to be less emotional, less reactive, I think. I remember when I first learned how to meditate, Jeremy, I went to some self-help weekend thing. It wasn't Anthony Robbins, but it was called Psy Seminars. And there was some guy in my office, and said, hey, we all need to sign up and go, because we're all going to make a bunch more money if we go, So I learned how to meditate then at an early age, in my early 20s. And I remember the person that was teaching us how to meditate, which was very positive and very good, and using some visualization techniques and other things. But really, it was around trying to get into your subconscious to try to make you believe things, and so that you can sell more, right? Basically. And that's kind of how I viewed meditation for a long time, until just a few years ago, when I think about meditating, I think more about trying to get rid of those thoughts. And trying to let my mind be still more, and be more relaxed, because I am a little bit more emotional person innately, and innately it's easy for me to react emotionally to things, and so it's a practice for me not to do that, and I also like to hear myself talk, and so I have to constantly work on becoming a better listener all the time. And as the closest people in my life, my daughter, and my wife, will tell you that I need to consistently keep working on it. And so I think on that subject, the question was, what can you do? I think in some of the conversations we've had about relationships and about what things that cause anxiety in those things, I think being aware that a lot of these thoughts that cause us issues emotionally are just lies. They're not the truth. And they're not, they're assumptions that our mind makes. And I sent you a podcast from this guy who I know was like this kind of a spiritual kind of
Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, that guy.
I listened to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and what in his book and in his podcast that I've listened to, one of the things that he talks about is, and he ties this a little bit into religion, but he said when his parents died, he saw the bodies just laying there dead, and the spirit left that body and it's gone, right? And so when I think about that, and I think about, and he calls everything that's earthly a form, right? So, and he calls the body a form, right? So anyway, when I think about that, I think about our thoughts being just thoughts that are being created by our brain, and if I think about a spirit, and I get a little spiritual here, I don't know if this is where you want to go with it, but I think about a spirit, it's not in my form or in my body. It comes from somewhere else. And so my spiritual beliefs and where I believe that comes from. But I know that thoughts are just things that my brain makes up. It could be completely random.
Yeah.
So I try not to put energy in things or thoughts that are negative, right? As we all try to.
Obviously, and thank you for sharing. Easier said than done. But for those that haven't taken an attachment quiz, I would highly recommend everybody take an attachment quiz. There's basically three basic types. There's more like subtypes and stuff, but there's 3 attachment styles. There's avoidant, secure, and anxious. And my attachment style, Jimmy, was the highest anxious score you could get. The highest number was like a 24, and I got a 24. And the key with any type of attachment, not just romantic, but it shows up mostly in romantic, similar to like love languages. It's like it's not just for romantic, but it comes up the most. It's just having good communication and sharing with that person thoughts and feelings that are coming up, and sharing things that will help you deal with those. And if it's the right person for you, they're going to be respectful and just say, hey, like that. And that's what I'm working on, is like I'll have these anxious thoughts, and some of it's on me to continue to be more aware of and be better at. But some of it also is, if like I can ask my partner to, hey, when you do this, A, B, and C, instead of D, E, and F, it reduces my anxiety, so it's having that communication with them as well. And that's what I'm learning. But yeah, I'm excited to continue to grow in that area. And that's one of my top focuses right now. I just read the book Attached twice. It's really good. It's all about attachment styles. And I think it was a big help for me. So yeah, it's just continuing to, but you're 100% right. I mean, that's definitely what's held me back, I think, in relationships from reaching their full potential today, is the anxiety I get from my attachment style. And I'm very I can be very guarded, and I don't get attached to too many people, but it's like once that wall comes down, it's like then the script flips. Then it's just like I get crazy anxious, and yeah, it's really frustrating, and it's really unhealthy.
I mean, I'm speaking from experience. I'm not innately an anxious person, but I've had anxious moments in my life, and it was a relatively new thing as it became an adult and everything. And but I've had very anxious moments in my life, and I think, just being aware of where those thoughts are originating from, that can help out a little bit, in terms of is it really true, or is it just something that my mind's making up? And so if it's something that my mind's making up, why put energy into it and make it worse? And then the other thing is kind of letting go of control a little bit. It's hard for A types and control freaks. And historically, I was a control freak, probably still am in many ways, but I've learned on that one too, because I'm naturally a controlling type individual probably. And but you can't control everything, right? And so, as I've been told many times from people who love me, keep my eye on my own paper, focus on me more than trying to control other people or other things and outcomes, and things are a little bit easier that way, I think, right? And so, anyway, I think you do. I think you're doing a great job. But if I said there was somewhere that I've listened to you and has become friends, where life can become a little bit less difficult in some areas, maybe that's one of them. I don't know.
No, you're right, and what you're saying is accurate. Like, there's no factual data to support it, but like how my brain works, I wish it was that easy, and I'm continuing to like I can not have any factual data and still have those anxious thoughts, right? So, and I'm aware of that. Like, my brain is smart enough to be like, hey, I don't have data to support this, but it doesn't matter, and that's where I believe the solution long term, well, twofold, is continuing to just work on myself and be aware, but continuing to have good, effective communication with whoever that person is, and just saying, hey, like, this is my personality style. There's going to be, mostly good things, but some of the challenges are going to be this. And, the right person for me is going to be like, I'm willing to, like, work on this with you, right? Or the right people for me in my life, period. Not just, like, a romantic partner, but anybody close to me that I would get, quote unquote, attached to. Yeah, it's just going to have to be willing to take some bumps and bruises along the way. And because of that, a lot of anxious styles, by the way, can be very loyal, dedicated partners if their opposing partner is willing to put up with a lot of the stuff. And it's not, when I say anxious, like I actually am not the super like jealous type. It's just like other weird anxieties, like fear of abandonment and just like things that like a big disagreement, and then it's like, oh, like we're gonna be done, and it's just like it those thoughts can be really, really hard. And you're right, there's no facts to support it, but it's not quite, I wish it were that simple, to like be like, oh, I have no factual data, so I'm going to just not worry about it. Like it's not quite that simple, because it's something I've dealt with my whole life, and it's just.
Well, I know that you and I talked about faith and religion in the past, and I can't actually remember what you are, but I think for people that do believe in a higher power, whatever that may be, and for a lot of people it's God and Jesus and Christianity, but people that do have faith, I think when times that are very anxious come about, you kind of have hope and you have faith that things are going to work out, anyways. And so I think that's where some people can benefit. And it's not, if it's for you to make that decision as far as faith goes, but I think that's where a lot of that anxiety can rest, and then also kind of give up control over some of the things that we don't have control over, that we have anxiety over or worry about. So anyway, I'll finish that thought with that one. But one thing I do want to say to you about your question earlier that I wanted to kind of comment on a little bit more was about wealth and success, and because it goes back to what I do for a living. But I think it's really important for people to think about like what's important about money to them. Think about that. Like, what's important about money to you? What does it do? Like, I know for both of us, one of the things it does for us is gives us some more freedom, right? To choose to do what we want to do with our time. And that's a very, very, very important thing. And so, but for other people, it might do other things or not do other things. And so I think asking that question can also help people that are super wealthy. Because once you have a lot of money, your problems are a little different, right? If you know that you're never going to run out, number one. And then two, you can kind of do whatever you want with your life, I guess, in terms of buying things or wanting things or whatever. Because nobody needs it. Nobody needs $1 billion, right? But once you get to extreme levels of wealth, like what's really important about money to you, and what do you want? What kind of a legacy do you want it to leave behind when it comes to wealth with your family? And I think those are important discussions that need to happen as you accumulate more wealth. And it's shocking to me, but it's not surprising. I will read about there are some local people in town who passed away in the last few months. One that's very big in the news, like Tony Hsieh, the guy that started Zappos. And the guy's nearly a billionaire, and the guy dies without a will. It's crazy that those things kind of happen. And there are all these financial advisors and people in these people's lives like that. And so it's not surprising, because I've seen it so often. So it doesn't come surprise to me, but it is surprising to a lot of other people that, there are a lot of negative consequences to somebody that has wealth or a lot of assets to die, without a will, or even with a will. They should have some sort of estate planning done. So going back to what I said, what's really important about money, which kind of leads into what's important about money to someone when it comes to what the purpose is for that, as well as values. I think it help articulate for someone in writing what their goals might be for financial goals. And then if you're working with someone like me or somebody else, then maybe we can help you construct a good plan that gives the person the highest probability of success with the goals that they have. And so I think it's important to think about that.
Yeah, that's a great way to finish it. Full disclosure, Jimmy was calling me multiple times. What are we going to talk about on this podcast? And Jimmy, before you knew it, we're at an hour and a half right now. So it was great to have you. And I'll see you soon in Dallas. I'll be seeing you in Dallas when this episode goes live, because I'm on like a little bit of a delay because we're recording before it goes live. So I'll be seeing you right around the time the episode goes live. So I hope.
All right, big guy.
All right, man. Talk soon.
Thanks for letting me be on your show. Talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you get updated when new episodes are live. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support is to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with people in your life that you feel would benefit from these types of discussions. Visit openlyoutspoken.com for additional details on the show. Find out how to connect with Jeremy on social media and learn more information about Jeremy's personal and business life. We'll see you next time.